That's that amazing
You know,
yeah. point. So
yeah.
you get me teary-eyed on
Yeah,
that
but
because I can
that's-
feel it
and
because
that was
that is
his-
the trigger.
And that's his active listening, right? That's his listening to understand versus listening to respond, because he could easily just say, like, okay, I got it, you know, just like he normally does, but not this time.
Hi, friends and family, and welcome back to another edition of Pam and the Purple Couch podcast. Today, we're going to do a little deep diving into actually communicating with those around you. So many times, we don't stop and listen. We stop and respond. And today, we want to talk about how the healing can begin when we actually take a moment just to pause and listen. You know, we see this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the huge culprit of this. You know, it was funny. I was having this like little flashback when I was reading our notes and everything to prepare. And I didn't know if I was going to say this or not because of being on air. But if I can do a mirror reflection to help others that are listening to this, then I hope that this can cause a chain reaction. I am the biggest culprit on allowing my amygdala and past behavior to dictate my thought process.
Okay.
So, give you an example. You know, I have 2 rules: don't lie and don't steal.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my live by rules. Everything else we can handle. But I have found myself, and especially reading on this topic, I find myself that if it is someone who I've caught in a fib, white lie, whatever we give an excuse, but it's still not being honest, that when I have any interaction with them, I am definitely not actively listening.
Mm.
I am looking at the person going, and how much is that is true? And are you lying to me again? And yeah, all that self-talk we've talked about in other episodes. I'm a huge culprit of that, you know. Or if it's someone that I have a disdain for, I'm just like, I'm here. Am I really listening? And so I know that's self-reflection, but I think that if we're honest with ourselves, we all do this a bit.
Oh yeah, well, it's a history of consequences. So your 2 rules are don't lie, don't steal, right? And that's predicated on history.
Yes.
A lot of history, right? I know that, but not our viewers know that. But you can just say history of learning, right? History of consequences. So how hard is it to listen to somebody, to truly understand and actively listen to somebody who has already broken those rules, you know? And
It's
so
effort.
those rules, but you could almost put any rule to that. So like when those are probably the 2 more universal ones, but like I was trying to think of other ones that could apply. So for example, not following through. All right. So as a manager, you want your staff to follow through on an expectation. And they didn't lie or steal, but they didn't finish, or they didn't do the assignment or whatever. And there's probably 100 reasons why, but they didn't. So the next time that you give them an expectation and they start to rattle off all the reasons why they can't follow through or get it done, you're less likely to feel confident in their ability to do it.
Absolutely.
Right? So you have built this huge history of consequences, learning, and that's a struggle for a parent, for a manager, to be able to always listen to understand, always active listening when you have that competing history of consequences.
Well, it's funny. I hear Dr. Joe Dispenza in my head going, are you in the present moment? Are you living in the past? Are you living in the predictable future? No, stay focused in the present moment. And I think that goes hand in hand with active listening. Because if I'm present with you, I'm listening to what is going on right now. I'm not thinking about, well, you dropped the ball last time. Oh, I trusted you and I ended up having to do your work and my work. Oh, yeah, you got excuses. Sure, you got excuses. And I think, again, I give credit to all the wonderful human resource directors that are out there. Is not a job ever for Pam. You know, and it's because of this, is because, you know, even when you put the work in, when you're doing breath work, when you're trying to live in the present moment, we really don't realize these emotional triggers that come at us from nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
And it's our wonderful response system. The more that I dive into the neuroscience and biology of how our brain actually works and how our emotions can dictate these thought processes, active listening becomes one of the most important components in every aspect. Like you were saying, not just in education, in relationships, communication, period.
Even in your own improvement, your self-improvement.
Correct. Well, that's that self-talk again.
Are you actively listening to yourself?
Am I listening, or am I pulling something, that is my version of what happened 10 years ago? Am I judging this new situation on a hallucination? I watched this wonderful, real podcast. It was a conference, and it was a 9-10-year-old little boy got up and asked the question, was about how do I live in the present moment? And it was a kid asking this question. And the speaker actually went through, and of course, I'm a big, huge Doctor Who fan. And so the way that I transformed that story, I took it into the TARDIS, because of course I'm going to go time travel. But speaking about the time travel, it was that no matter if you're going into the past or if you are in your time ship, and you're going into the future, when you walk out that door, it's still your present moment. So anything and everything that we are judging outside of that present moment is a hallucination, because it is a version of something that happened. So like example, when I'm telling you about don't lie and don't steal, those are my 2 rules. Well, the self-reflection, especially when we were preparing for this episode, is going, okay, Pam, well, are you judging that based on the past? And then you're judging that person on the past. So you're not giving even the opportunity to be in the present moment with them.
Right.
For me, I know it's a defense mechanism, because if I block you out because you lied, you broke the rule, now I am protecting myself.
Right.
I'm protecting my energy. I'm protecting, but then I'm losing the opportunity.
Well, and give yourself some grace too. I mean, there's a difference between a 4-year-old fibbing. They put something off the table and they broke and they don't want to get in trouble and blah, blah, blah. And it's a 4-year-old that has to learn about the value of truth telling versus an 18-year-old, a 25-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 42-year-old employee that violation of trust. And you can see this more so in relationships, right? Because relationships, once that violation of trust hits, it's very difficult to be a good active listener, because I don't know if I would say it's living stuck in the past. It's that it is your present, right? Your present is that person did violate. We're not talking 10, 15 years ago.
Correct.
We're talking instant, immediate, this present. And so I look at it as, of course, okay, so how do I be an active listener to somebody that violated my trust or lied or something like that? It's not going to be instantaneous, I don't think. I think that it's now rebuilding a new history of learning, a new consequence history. So kind of the opposite, right? So you broke my rule of don't lie, don't steal. Okay, now you got to show me you can follow the rule. So what's the opposite of don't lie? Tell the truth.
Correct.
What's the opposite of don't steal? Show me your honesty, right?
So it's funny when you were saying that, the first reaction I had was, okay, Pam, is there really a difference between the 4-year-old and the 30-year-old? And I want to say yes, but my gut, soul, everything, that intuition goes, no, Pam, there's really not.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the 4-year-old, I'm giving grace for them to learn. So why are you not giving grace to the 30-year-old?
So I have a thought on that, but what's your thought?
So in my head, when I'm listening to you, I'm hearing myself go, oh, you have to set up your boundary. So Manny, I just want to let you know I'm having a hard time focusing right now because of the break in trust that we had that happened. So if I come in my own honesty that I'm really trying to give you everything today during this conversation, but based on our past. Now, that's not true with Manny. Please understand. I just want to go
This is
there.
an example.
We're using an example. Manny and I, after almost 13 years, something like that, I think we were going back looking at pictures,
Yep.
you know, we do have this amazing relationship that even in our work environment, people have made comments on, because I can talk to you and you can talk to me. And we have this carte blanche kind of like, okay, Manny, if I'm overstepping, be like, Pam, take a deep breath. Or I'm like, Manny, we're going to have a talk.
Yep.
You know, but we're honest with each other
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
that.
Got to be.
We understand that we're human and that's going to happen. Reflecting on self here, because again, I'm hoping that if I do this, I can help others. I'm not that graceful to other people. And for me, that's something that I'm working on daily. If I find myself going, and I think we all have that trigger.
Yeah.
You know, if you notice that even when I said, the first thing I did was cross my fingers, you know, there's so many different body language cues. And the reason I want to bring it to the forefront is because if you are someone like me, that you're trying to stay in the present moment, you're trying not to prejudge, even based on your past, then watch your body cues. Because those are telltale. So when you, for me, Pam, you're crossing your fingers. Okay, well, are you really focused, or are you trying to concentrate on keeping yourself in check? And that's great self-talk, because what does it do? It brings me aware. And if I can be aware of where I am at right now, emotionally, physically, in the space with you talking, then I can become an active listener because I can stop. And I think that's that pause that we've been talking about so much, is that pause to go, ooh, you're back in the past. All right, families, we'll be right back after this special message. At Bridge to Tomorrow Foundation, we are there filling the gaps that federal and state funding doesn't do for all of our neurodivergent families. There's educational, therapy, and support services that are available to our families, but most of them can't afford those services. We need your help today in helping us fund the future for those children. We need a gap, a bridge to get them to where they need to go. So today, help us help them be our future. And now, back to the Purple Couch Podcast.
With active listening, you know, one of the most powerful parts of active listening, I think, is the reciting back what you heard. So if you're in a conversation, are you just responding? So A, B, C, D, E, right? It's just a constant flow of conversation. Or active listening teaches us, you said A, I'm going to repeat A, so I make sure I heard A before I say B. And so active listening, that one part of active listening that I always remember learning about, was the ability to recite back what you heard just to ensure you understand. And that's, to me, one of the most powerful parts of knowing whether you're listening to respond or listening to understand, is practicing and that skill of reciting back. So going back to the 4-year-old and adult, so this is my personal opinion, and this is why you know it's not scripted, because we did not talk about this before, and so feel free to disagree. But for me, maybe it's because I now have a 4-year-old in my home, along with a soon-to-be 18-year-old in my home, an adult in my home with me, my wife, and then I manage a group of staff between the ages of 21 and 40-something. And I think the reason I think there's such a distinction of the same behavior, lying, okay, let's use that one. That's a good example. Why I would give more grace to the 4-year-old. I think it's because their history of learning is so small. They've only had 4 years to learn.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, but that's learned behavior then.
So sure, the lying's a new behavior, let's call it. Like they didn't lie at the age of 0.
Exactly.
You know, at 6 months, at 1 year.
Where did they learn that though?
They learned it from the environment, right? For sure. But I give more grace, I guess, because it's not a frequent behavior. It's not something that they instantaneously knew. They just, I said the wrong, that guy lied or whatever. Versus an adult who's had years of experience, Lying could not be just something they just discovered,
Right.
and then even all the way to adults that we are managing. And so I think about the way that we operate our work. We give some grace. If you get caught in a lie, strike one. Now you're on notice.
Right.
But we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Are you going to learn from that? Then you lie again. Strike two, right? And we don't play baseball in business, right? Strike two is a big strike.
Yes.
Don't do strike three, because
Right.
strike three is
You're out the
probably
door, man.
you're out the door. And I think that's why I would say there is a difference, because when you're a 4-year-old and that's your child.
Right.
All right, we're gonna keep working on this for the next 12 years, until you're 18. And then when you're 18, don't lie and steal from me, because now we get a whole another avenue of, well, should you still be living in my house if this is where, so I think there is a certain level, but you said the word right. It's my boundaries.
Yes.
So my boundaries are a lot different with a 4-year-old than they are with an adult.
So I think the reason I'm shaped a little different on this is because my exposure inside my personal home with my child was with a neurodivergent child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And parents, I think you can kind of tune into this and understand this, especially if your home is graced with a wonderful neurodivergent child. Because when I was talking about that being learned behavior, and Loki, I love you. And when you watch and listen to this one, he's going to be like, Mom. But fibbing, lying was not even something in Loki's world at 4. You follow where I'm at?
Okay.
So when he started using vocal expression that anyone could understand, so I'm going to go at 6.
Okay.
There's a lot of learned information when he was nonverbal that's instilled in him. And as you know, in our population of wonderful neurodivergent young beings, there's no filter of honesty.
None.
So what is appropriate in the personal home versus in a public setting, that's something that's had to be shaped.
Gotcha.
So I did not have to ever worry about fibbing or lying when it came to my son and I, because he was so brutally honest. Just like many of our families listening to this is why we've laughed before, in some early seasons. It's like, you don't have secrets when you have a neurodivergent kid, because the teacher knows your CVS worker or Walgreens worker. How are you doing? I'm doing the best I can, man. Today's been a rough. I mean, he will just tell the world how he's feeling. And the fibbing didn't come in. And this is why I'm going to agree with you and see it in that area. But for me, again, it comes to your environment and what has caused you to have these belief systems. So everyone's going to be a little different. It wasn't until, and this is a big self-reflection, I bit the book right now. Because as I'm saying this to you, I'm going, it's my reaction. So parents, again, watch this one. This is a big one here for Pam. Loki didn't fib until after 18.
Oh, wow.
Enough that we've had talks about it. I mean, it breaks my heart. Like, Mom, make Mom cry. When most kids, or what is the trigger that you really can push your mom or dad, and then you're like, oh, I overstepped. Oh, I knew that was the button I shouldn't have pushed. Loki's is being stupidity dishonest. Like, I'm not talking about ever being dishonest on anything that in another family would matter as much. But like, I put the towels away, Mom. I go upstairs and they're just sitting beside the cabinet. Something as small as that. But then the self-reflection, when I said I bit the book here, is that, why did he feel that he needed to not be honest when he didn't? This is not pattern of behavior in our home. It's because of my reaction. So he has learned that, oh shit, Mom's going to go off because I didn't do my responsibilities or my chores. And it's easier for me to say, I just did it, Mom, so that she doesn't come up here and check. And we've actually had this type of conversation that when I come upstairs and I'm like standing in his doorway and he sees my face. Yelling, arguing has no reaction better than me just feeling the disappointment. him watching my face with the disappointment has so much more of an impact on him than me yelling for 30 minutes about why aren't you doing your responsibilities. So I self-reflect that here on the podcast to go, parents, remember that sometimes it's our reactions that causes the learned behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, my child who doesn't lie, who is so brutally honest, I mean, all the way down to eating dinner. Mom, yeah, this is okay. It's a little salty. Next time you need to really, I mean, he's just that way. And so you've got to remember, you've got to love it, no matter if it's the good or the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then watch your own reactions, because even sitting here on the couch now, I'm going, oh man, he just doesn't want mom to go off.
Well, I think that example is a good one too, because I can relate to that. I had a situation with Aiden not too long ago, but to me, that example is a good example of, usually we think of us being the active listeners. In that example, that's Loki being an active
Absolutely.
listener of your body language, of your, your emotional response to things, certain things, right? And that I can relate to that, because Aiden and I had a moment not too long ago. He disappointed me. We had long conversations about his level of respect for certain, for people in the house, and he didn't demonstrate that. And I had to hear about it, and I heard about it, and it just, it made me sad,
Yes.
that he would do that after we had already had, deep conversations of what I thought he understood. And I remember it was not too long ago, it was just last week, I think, where I came home, sat him down, talked to him, and he, in his way, didn't say much at first, but then within a few minutes, we were by ourselves, and he's like, I'm really sorry that I did that.
Oh.
And, for him, and my son's not a very, talkative young soul. So when he said that, I was like, well, I appreciate that, bud. I do. And he goes, no, I get it. I should have done blah, 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 And I was like, well, good. I'm glad. And so
That's that amazing learning point. So you
yeah,
get me teary-eyed on
yeah,
that,
but
because I can
that's-
feel it, because
that was
that is
his-
the trigger.
and that's his active listening, right? That's his listening to understand versus listening to respond, because he could easily just say like, okay, I got it, just like he normally does, but not this time. So I'm hoping, we turn a corner here and there, but
Let's not use that word hope.
we are turning a corner.
Hope gives away, I used to love the word hope, guys. It was if on Pam's gravestone, it was that she gave hope to others.
Yeah.
And then I did a shift, because again, talking about words having power, and hope, that word still gives leeway for failure.
Sure. Yeah. That's a good point.
So I'm going to put it out there that no, that's a blessing, and the gratitude of the awakening for Aiden to be able to take that level of maturity, and just like sitting here on the couch, I think, as we talk about setting up these expectations on our children, we also need to look in the mirror, because a lot of us that are now parents might not have had the best environmental factors growing up. And so remember to take that pause and give yourself a little bit of grace, and remember that you're learning along with your child.
Yep.
As we're wrapping up today, I'm getting that, what an epiphany. And it was this gentleman that was talking about when we look at our children and we truly sit back and look, so many times we're just trying to protect them from things that we went through in our own growth. But at the same time, if we protect them at all times, just like with Aiden, then we stop that level of maturity from happening when they learn it on their own.
Yep.
And so for me, I think that I want to share with all of our families is to not just give that child grace, but remember that sometimes in those moments that you're projecting this perfection onto your child, that you need to take a moment and let yourself know that it's okay not to be perfect.
Yeah, lovely.
Even as a parent.
Yeah, my takeaway from this conversation, and what I would say is my wrap up. So I think parents and managers have something in common, and that is that we are, I guess, by virtue of the job, we are problem solvers. And so problem solvers don't tend to be the best active listeners. We hear something and we respond because we're constantly trying to solve that problem. And where in reality, our true job should be to be good understanders, like understanding what the problem is, understanding if that person knows how to solve that problem. So are we asking all the questions we need to ask to see if that person, that learner, whether it's our child or our employee, do they understand how to solve that problem? Why do they have that problem? Where's, unearthing the root cause of it all before we go into problem solving mode. And if we do that as a practice, I think then we become better listeners to understand.
I love this. I love this conversation. The impact of sitting back and being able to just be calm and realizing that even in flaws, our kids are still the perfect little beings they were made to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, moms and dads, friends, family, caregivers, if you like this episode, please remember to hit the like, subscribe, and share so that you don't miss any of these amazing episodes coming out from our home to yours. So, guys, until next time, bye. See you soon.